Hi guys, I'm Sarah with Rusty Dog & Co. and welcome back for another video in this kitchen remodel series. Now in this video, we're getting out of the kitchen and we're going back to my workshop because it is finally time to start building the kitchen cabinets. Now that's gonna entail building both the base cabinets as well as the upper cabinets. Every box, every face frame completely built from scratch to custom fit this kitchen. It is a big project to cover, but don't worry, I'm gonna go over the entire process with you from start to finish, from getting all the plywood that I need for these kitchen cabinets, to breaking that plywood down, to assembling the boxes, to putting the face frames together. We're gonna cover it all in this video. All right, so let's get those tools fired up. Let's start making some kitchen cabinets. All right guys, I think I have like 8 base cabinets to make, maybe like 6 or 7 upper cabinets, and then I have a pretty large sized pantry as well. So with that means that there are going to be a lot of pieces to sort of keep track of. And I was not about to take on all of this without having a really solid plan in place. So prior to getting to this stage right here, I spent a couple of days modeling out the entire kitchen. I've got a pretty good idea of my layout. I got all of my dimensions sort of nailed down. So I spent a couple days, like I said, modeling everything up, making a cut list for each of my separate cabinets. And then I went on and took all of those dimensions, and I've talked about it before. Something I like to do when it comes to breaking down sheet goods is I go onto a website called opticutter.com. I take all of those dimensions from that cut list that I make up, and then I inputted all of my dimensions, and it tells me exactly how I can cut this out so that I have the least amount of waste as possible. One side of this sheet of plywood is pre-finished, and that's going to be for the inside of the cabinets. So you can also choose to pay attention to grain direction when you input all this stuff. So I made sure that all of my grain directions are going in the orientation that I want, because all of those insides of all the cabinets, they are already pre-finished. I don't have to do any painting or anything like that. So grain direction is a little bit more important because I don't want the grains going all over the place. Got about 12 sheets of plywood to get started with for this kitchen. I think that's going to be pretty close to the amount I need. The plan is to just go along with my cut list sheet here and start ripping down these sheets of plywood. As I go, I'll try to label everything. Every single part will get a label as I cut it, and then I'll try to stack it in sections that are according to what cabinet it goes for. When you're doing something to this scale, you have to try to be as organized as possible, or else it can turn into a mess real quick. That's the plan. Let's get to cutting these sheets down. Let's start with our base cabinets first. All right, here we go. About to make the first cut for these kitchen cabinets. And thank goodness I have this track saw to help me work my way through 12 sheets of plywood. Definitely the most I've ever cut down at once. Now, I ordered all of the plywood for this kitchen from a local lumber supplier that I get pretty much most of my lumber from these days. They even delivered it to me, thankfully, because loading and unloading 12 sheets of plywood into my truck, yeah, that did not sound like a good time to me. Now, as I've mentioned in previous videos, I like to cut these plywood pieces close to their final size with the track saw, and then I will cut everything to its final dimension over on the table saw. Whew. All right, so this is going pretty good, but this is going to take me a while. I've got like 12 sheets, so many different cuts. It's probably gonna take me a couple days, so I'm not gonna make you watch all of that. So next time you see me, I'll have all of this stuff broken down, and hopefully we'll be ready to start assembling these cabinet boxes. All right guys, it's time to start getting these cabinet boxes put together. As you can see, I've got just pieces of lumber everywhere. I broke down all of that plywood. I think it was like 12 or 13 sheets total, so it was a lot of plywood to get all of these cabinets. Now this is the base cabinets and the upper cabinets as well. I've got them all cut. I've got them stacked in sections according to what cabinet they are. And now we're just gonna begin the process of putting it all together. Okay guys, so for these cabinets, I'm gonna start by assembling my toe kicks first. Now, what is a toe kick exactly? The toe kick on a cabinet is just that little bit of overhang that you see at the bottom of the cabinets that allow your feet to sort of slide under the cabinets comfortably, so you're just not like kicking the bottom of the cabinets. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can incorporate incorporate a toe kick into your cabinet. You can just simply notch the sides of your cabinet panels and then connect the two, and that can sort of give you that overhang that you're looking for. What I like to do is I like to make a separate box that's a little bit less deep than the overall dimension of the cabinet. And that will provide me that overhang that I need for my feet to slide under. The reason I sort of do that now, I used to do it the other way. When you're putting cabinets in place and you want to get them level, it's a little bit easier to just deal with the toe kick boxes, to get those in place, get those shimmed up if you need to, because a lot of floors are not level, so you're gonna have to do some shimming to get things level. It's much easier to lift up something that is only this big versus an entire cabinet that's put together. So what I'll do is I'll make these toe kick boxes, I'll get those in place on the floor. If I need to get them level, I can shim those up. Once I get all of those level, then once I sit my base cabinets on top of those, then those base cabinets should be level as well, because I've taken the time to get those toe kicks level. So that's sort of why I kind of take this approach now to making the toe kicks for these cabinets. There's really not a right way or a wrong way to do it. It's just a matter of personal preference. I'm gonna keep things pretty simple for getting these toe kick boxes together. I'm just going to get them attached together with some brad nails at first, and then once I get the box entirely together, then I'll come in and add some screws for support as well. I've got, I think, 8 base cabinets that I've got to put together for this kitchen. So let's get started on throwing together these toe kick boxes. And once those are together, we can start working on putting those cabinet boxes together. Okay, no. Get out of here, B. Get. Go on, B. Get out. Go on, get. Nope. I'm just using some of these like 90-degree corner clamps. These are Pony Jorgensen brand. These are just nice because it kind of holds the pieces together so that I can just have a hand-free. I don't have to use a clamp that kind of gets in my way when it comes to nailing. So I just put those in the corner. I can throw a couple nails in there and then I'll come in and add my screws. All right. So far I really like these things. Nice to not have to have a bigger clamp that kind of gets in my way. And they seem to hold things pretty square, which, if you don't know, keeping things pretty square when it comes to building cabinets is kind of important, especially when it comes to adding things like drawer boxes. It's gonna make your life a lot easier if you just keep things square during the assembly. We are perfectly square every corner. Another way you can check to make sure you're square is just take a measurement, your corners, 35.25, and then do the same thing on the opposite corner, and that number should be exactly the same, and it is. That makes me very happy. We've got nails in here. Now let's go ahead and add our screws. Now I'm going to be adding these 1.5" number 8 screws here. I'm gonna make sure that I pre-drill for all of my holes. That way I don't get any splitting of the plywood. All right, we've got one toe kick box put together. Let's work on assembling the rest. Okay guys, I've got all the toe kicks for the kitchen assembled now, and I just put a side piece for one of the cabinets up here so you can kind of see how this is gonna work. If I have this base cabinet sitting on this toe kick box, as you can see, it's a little bit deeper than this toe kick box, which is gonna give me that overhang there and the height here that I want for my toe kick. So we've got all of these toe kick boxes assembled now. Now it's time to start working on the base cabinets themselves. We've got a few steps that we need to take care of before we can start throwing these things together. So we're gonna move on to that. So the next step is I need to get a groove cut in my pieces here that can accept my back panel. That back panel is gonna be about 1/4 of an inch, but I wanna sneak up on that fit. So I'm just gonna cut it over at the table saw and just kind of sneak up on that until I get a perfect fit. Now I know I want a 3/4 inch support piece that'll sit behind that back panel so that I have somewhere that I can screw these cabinets into the studs of the walls. So I have just placed a scrap block here and then made a mark down my piece that shows me where I want to start my groove essentially. Now since this is pre-finished plywood and right now currently I just have a ripping blade in my table saw, I'm going to switch out the blade on my table saw to this ultra fine finish blade. Hopefully that will just help me prevent tearing out any of this nice looking pre-finished veneered plywood, and we'll get a nice smooth cut. I might also lay down some painter's tape to just try to help eliminate some of that. I'm gonna get that blade changed out and we'll start ripping these grooves for all of our pieces. So you can see the difference between these blades. This is a ripping blade here, and it has much fewer teeth than this ultra fine finish blade. You can see how many more teeth it has, and that's just going to allow it to hopefully not have quite as much tear out. To get these grooves cut for my back panels, I like to run all the pieces through once. Then I move my fence over a little bit and I run everything through again. I just repeat this process until I sneak up on that fit for my 1/4 inch back panels. So switching that blade on the table saw did a pretty good job. As you can see, that's a pretty clean cut. Minimal to really not any tear out. Okay guys, so I'm starting to put my first base cabinet together. Before I start assembling that cabinet, there's one last step that I want to take care of, and that's drilling some of these shelf pin holes in the sides of my cabinets. I want to have some adjustable shelves so that way they can be moved depending on what you want to store in them. So to achieve that, I'm going to be using this shelf pin jig from Craig, and what I've done is I just cut a little scrap block that's 10 inches, and then I butted that up with the top of my cabinet, clamped it in place, and now I can sit this up against that and then clamp this in place. I've got my drill bit here with my depth stop collar on here, and then I can just drill out all of these holes. If I need more, all I have to do is place this little pin in the hole, and then I can shift this whole thing down and drill more. I'm probably just gonna put a little bit in the middle here. Having this little scrap block should keep me even on both sides. That way my holes are lining up. That way when I set the shelves on, they're gonna be nice and level. All right, let's get these drilled out. Got one side. Now we want to flip it over, do the same thing for the other side. So now this time my top is up here. This side, get that flush with the top, clamp this little spacer block, take our jig, put it up against that. as you can see, I've got shelf pins that are lined up evenly on both sides. That way, when I put my shelves in here, I can stick the little shelf pins in here and the shelves will just sit on top of that. These will allow them to be adjustable if you need more height down low or up high. This should give plenty of space for that adjustability. So pretty much for all of the cabinets that are going to have shelves in the middle that need to be adjustable, I'll just be drilling these little shelf pin holes in each of the side pieces. All right, guys, we've got our first cabinet box sort of put together. I forgot to turn on the camera, so you didn't see that happen, but it's a pretty simple process. All I did was put the pieces together and threw some clamps on here. Now it's time to get this cabinet box assembled together. And normally I would try to add wood glue when I was joining up these pieces, but because this is all pre-finished plywood, that wood glue is just not going to work when it comes to this pre-finished stuff here. I could cut out dado grooves and then use wood glue, but that would just take so much more time. And because I have so many cabinets to put together, we're gonna be all about efficiency and just trying to get these boxes together as quickly as we can. So I'm gonna forego the wood glue for these cabinet boxes. I've done some research and I think that's okay. It seems like a lot of people do put cabinet boxes together without using wood glue, and they seem to be plenty strong without that glue. What we're gonna do for attaching these boxes is I'm gonna go around and attach everywhere with 1.5 inch brad nails first, just to sort of hold the boxes together. Once those boxes are together and I can take the clamps off, then I'll come in and add additional screws as well so that we can make sure this thing is good and strong. So that's sort of the plan for all of these cabinet boxes. I've got a lot to put together, so I'm gonna get to work on doing it. Let's just say I definitely went heavy on the screws with these cabinets since I couldn't use wood glue. I have so many cabinets to put together and I don't have a ton of room in this shop for them. I need to find a way that I can sort of move them around and out of the way when I need to. So let me flip this thing over. Probably have to be moving these things around quite a bit just so that I have space to work in and I can kind of move them out of my way. Now, what I don't want to do is I don't want to damage the bottom of the cabinet by just dragging it around my shop. So the solution I sort of came up with is I'm going to take some scrap wood that I have here, and this is pre-finished on one side, so I'm hoping that'll be nice because this is nice and smooth and it should slide really easily. And I'm just, I've countersunk some holes. I'm just going to attach these little pieces to the bottom of my cabinet. That way I can slide this around my shop a little bit easier and I'm not worried about damaging the bottom of the cabinet itself. Once I'm ready to get these things installed, I can just remove the screws and pop these pieces off. Oh my gosh, did I really just do that? Let's make sure that didn't go through. Whew. Good, because we don't want to drill into our cabinet too far. So I'm using 1 1/4 inch screws here. So now if I flip this back over, now I can slide these around on my shop, and I don't have to worry about damaging the bottom of the cabinet because it's just sliding on those pieces I attached. All right, let's keep making cabinets. All of the support pieces for these cabinets will be attached with pocket hole screws. I like to add about 3 of these pieces to the top of the cabinet box and 2 on the back for screwing these cabinets into the studs. For any of my shelves that don't need to be adjustable, I just cut out some spacer blocks and use those to get everything lined up perfectly while I get it installed. For a couple of the base cabinets, I'm just using a 1/4 inch back panel. That's why I cut those grooves out so I could slide that. Scares me to death. My goodness. Whew, that always scares me so bad. For a few of the cabinets, like this one here in particular, I'm gonna be using a full 3/4 inch back panel. Could have used 1/2 inch as well, but I just went ahead and made it 3/4 inches, and I'm just going to install that. The reason I'm using a full 3/4 inch panel for these cabinets is because this is going to be all drawers, and I will install the drawer slides, and I'll get those attached into the back of the cabinet in my face frame. So I wanted to have enough meat there to screw those drawer slides into place. A lot of them are just slight variations, but I'm gonna get this cabinet put together now. All right guys, I finally got all the cabinet boxes for the kitchen together now, and so what I want to work on next is adding a face frame to those cabinets. Now you don't have to add a face frame. A lot of people might do like Euro style cabinets that are frameless, or you could just use some edge banding, but for these cabinets I want to add a face frame, and I'm going to make that face frame out of some of this poplar wood here. I like to use poplar for face frames because it is pretty durable and this stuff paints really well, and since these cabinets are getting painted, this is generally what I like to use. It's a little bit cheaper than something like hard maple, so we can save a little bit of money there, which is nice. So I've got a list of all of the parts for all the face frames, so I'm just gonna go ahead, start ripping this all down, get everything sort of cut to size, get everything labeled so I can keep this all straight, and then once I have all my parts, I can start the process of putting it all together. Now this poplar lumber that I'm using here is S3S lumber, and what that means is that it is surfaced on 3 sides. Basically, that means that it's already been planed to the proper thickness and it has one straight edge that I can run up against the fence of my table saw to cut to the widths that I need. This saves me a lot of time because I don't have to mill every single board for this face frame. So here I'm just ripping all of my face frame pieces to size on the table saw, then I'll get them cut to their final lengths at the miter saw. Every single piece gets a label as I'm cutting it so I can keep all of the pieces straight, which is more important than you'd think. All right, friends, I've got all the pieces for my face frame cut to size now. Now it's time to get started on joining them all together. And I'm gonna do that using a combination of wood glue and pocket hole screws. So what I need to do next is I need to take all of my rail pieces and I need to cut some pocket holes in the back of them so that I can use those holes to attach my pocket hole screws and sort of join everything together. Now, you can use any sort of pocket hole cutter. I happen to have this Craig Foreman here, so I'm gonna use that just because it's gonna speed up this process a lot since I have quite a few of these rail pieces for my face frames. All right, let's get started. All right, folks, I've got those pocket holes cut in the back of my rail pieces now, and now it's time to sort of get this thing glued up and attached. Now, this is always one of the more challenging things for me, just for my brain, because in order to be able to attach these screws, I need to flip this entire thing over, and so I'm always just trying to keep everything straight, basically mirroring this entire face frame, making sure that I get everything set up where it needs to go. So I'm just gonna work on flipping all of my pieces over, and then I'll get to work putting some glue on these joints here and then sinking in those pocket hole screws to kind of hold everything together. All right, let's see. If we're gonna flip this thing over, this piece has gotta go this way. Beep, beep, beep. Just kind of getting it mocked up for the moment. I think that's right. So it means if you're looking at it this way, then this is your left side now. That's your right side now. Oh yeah, I think the old brain figured it out for me this time. So before I get to attaching and adding any glue, there's one more thing that I wanna do. I wanna go ahead and cut some spacer blocks to size for these openings here. It's just a lot easier to keep everything consistent if I just use some blocks that are cut to the exact size that I need for these openings. I'll probably just cut the blocks for this top part, and then this should fall where it's supposed to. So I'm gonna get those pieces cut to size, that way I can put those in place when it comes time to glue everything together. I got a new wood glue to try out for this project. This is the Boss Dog Glue Company. I've seen a lot of people using this stuff lately. I originally got it because I wanted some darker colored wood glue, but they had a sale on their 3-pack. So I got the clear, the regular, and the darker wood glue. So I'm excited to try this stuff out. Okay, first joint down, a lot more to go. Let's see how we did here. I'm just using this little Craig clamp to kind of hold it together for me so keep stuff from sliding around. Wipe away my wood glue. Okay, beautiful. Nice, clean, strong joint there once that glue sets up. Now, a couple of things that I've learned from putting face frames together with pocket holes is try not to get the pocket holes too close to the edges of the wood, because a lot of times that'll cause like the wood and the ends to split. So I try to keep them kind of centered on the piece. The other thing that I've kind of learned is when you're installing your pocket screws, make sure you're using something like a drill and not a driver. And even on my drill, I have the settings set down so it's not quite as strong and powerful, and I just sink it in until I start to get some resistance, and then I back off of it. In the past, I've used my driver because I'm just used to using a impact driver when I'm sinking in screws, but for something like this, you don't want it to be too crazy strong. You want to just get it in there and until it's nice and snug, and then back off of it. That way you're not risking splitting some of this wood. Just a few helpful tips that have helped me, lessons I've learned over the years, and so maybe that might help some of you guys as well. I'm putting my headphones back on, gonna knock this stuff out, so you probably won't be hearing much chatter from me. That might be a good thing. I got any glue squeezed out in my corners, I want to make sure I go ahead and get that taken care of now, because that's going to be a lot harder to sand out later. Very nice. Starting to look like a face frame or what? I'd say it is. Perfect. Perfect. Yes. Hold on a second, guys. I gotta show you what I'm looking at right now. It's probably the most adorable thing I've ever seen. What are you doing that. We have our first face frame put together, and I gotta say, it looks pretty good. Now we just have to do this a lot more times. Alright guys, I'm calling that a wrap on the kitchen cabinets and face frames. That was a lot of work. Probably the most amount of time that I've spent in the shop so far on this remodel. But I have to say, after looking at all the cabinet boxes together, now they're looking pretty nice. Now you might be wondering why I did not attach the face frames to the kitchen cabinets, and well, that's because if you remember back to my previous video, I think it was, I explained how they didn't make doors in old houses very wide. So I didn't have very much leeway there when it comes to getting things into the house. So I did not want to go ahead and attach the face frames and then just get those beat up trying to get them into the house. So that means that I'm going to take the cabinet boxes in separate from the face frames, and then I'll get those face frames attached when we're in the house. But all in all, we're pretty much done with all of the steps for the cabinet boxes and the face frames. And that means that next we can move on to another part of these custom kitchen cabinets, and that's building all of these shaker style cabinet doors. And boy, there are a lot of them to make. But that's when things really start to come together and start to make these kitchen cabinets look really finished. So that's all gonna take place in the next video, so make sure you stick around for that one. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll be seeing you guys again right back here for my next video. Bye.